why that is. And the occupational therapist needs to work with you to make sure that Wednesday between 4 and 5 is not the only time you see benefits. The other issue is developmental changes over the lifespan. So sensory strategies that might have worked and have been effective for a child when they were younger may change when they're a teenager. So you want to do things that are age appropriate. So where a 5-year-old may have really benefited from heavy work and proprioceptive activity by doing an obstacle course when they were little, now at 14 and 15 years old, maybe that can turn into physical fitness and exercise. Oh, echoey, sorry. That can make it much more age appropriate and still meet the sensory needs. So, and what we've been saying all along, even sensory issues have to be addressed by what is motivating and of interest to the child. So all of those issues with sensory issues, I can't throw out an idea just because I think it's a good idea. It has to make sense and be interesting to the child of focus.
سلام، با تشکر از زحمات شما. بیماری اوتیسم با خوردن شیر مادر به وجود می آید. So the question is, thanking you in advance, whether autism is caused through lactating.
No. I'm being silly, but no, we don't believe that it's caused by that, but we don't know definitively if that would play a role.
روش شما برای اینکه خانواده رو با کودک اوتیسم مواجه کنید چیست؟ به عبارتی چگونه خانواده رو از انکار خارج می‌کنید طوری که به واقعیت اوتیسم روبرو شود، نه امید بیخود و نه ناامیدی. What is your approach towards facing a family with autism? In other words, how do you help a family leave denial? How do you help them face the reality of autism? Not that it's, well, excessive undue hope or losing hope.
That's a really great question. Thank you. Denial is a hard one, and Dr. Rahimi today spoke about stigma and how the first step of treatment and moving forward is accepting and the diagnosis or any of the presenting issues that's going on or challenges within the household. In the U.S., we do see denial as well. We see families, and it's a process. There's no special answer for each person. Their process and their journey for acceptance is going to be different. But we do a lot of group treatment where they meet other families. Information and resources are out there in order to become more informed and learn about the benefits of starting intervention and how the parent can really, the sooner they start the intervention, the better. And to really work through the process. So no exact answer, but in the U.S. it's definitely a process. It's still challenging, and a lot of times group therapy helps parents connect with other parents and learn from each other, which I hope that this is something that can happen here as well.
سوال بعد، اگر کودکی مدفوع خود را بخورد یا اینکه به صورت و در و دیوار بمالد، باید چه کار کرد؟ چه راهکارهایی برای کنترل مدفوع ادرار و دست نزدن به مدفوع وجود دارد؟ So if a child puts his feces into his mouth or face or around, what should be done? What strategies and approaches are there for controlling feces and urination or not touching it?
So the first thing I would want to try to look at is to try to figure out why the child is engaging in this behavior. It could be for a number of reasons, and I imagine our OT may want to speak to one possibility is that there's a feeling that they're getting from this, And if it's something that feels good, I would look for a replacement behavior. So what is something, maybe silly putty or Play-Doh, something that might be able to give the child a similar feeling in a more appropriate way? Of course, we would have to figure out how to teach that and know the right times to be offering that replacement behavior. I would also look at if this might be occurring usually when children are engaging in these really challenging behaviors. It might be to seek some sort of attention. It's really, really hard to ignore a child who is holding their feces or playing with it. So it's almost guaranteed to get a reaction out of someone in the household. So I would also, it's hard to answer questions like this definitively because each child that would engage in this behavior could be doing it for a different reason. So what's important to look at is why you think your child or the child you know that does this might be engaging in this sort of behavior, figure out what purpose it's serving, and then try to meet that need in a more appropriate way. Yeah.
Just to add a little bit more, paying attention to what happens before this behavior and what goes on after. Those are two ways to really collect data, pay attention as a parent, and say, well, this is happening at a certain time, or this is happening right after we do some sort of routine in the day, to kind of get a better sense of what this function is what the purpose of this behavior is providing for the child. So in order to change behavior, we must understand or change what happens before it and what happens after. And after is usually our reaction or how we are reinforcing it or not.
And at times it may be appropriate to seek help from a medical doctor as well, just to make sure that it isn't occurring due to any discomfort or pain. We want to make sure to be ruling that out before trying behavioral interventions.
The last comment I'll make about that is, as we're noticing, so fecal smearing and those kinds of things can have a sensory, behavioral, and communicative issue. So all the more reason to have the family bring these issues to the team and have the team work together on solving it.
Yeah, I'll just skip them through. Okay. So, چشمانداز کشف علت واقعی اوتیسم و داروی مؤثر در درمان آن را چگونه می‌بینید؟ What's your perspective on understanding and discovering the real cause of autism and discovering an effective medication for the treatment?
So unfortunately, we are not the medical panel. Dr. Hagerman and many of those who spoke yesterday would be probably some of them spoke on what they view as the cause of autism and the medical treatments for autism, but it would not be appropriate for this group specifically to speak to medications, as we are not licensed to prescribe medications. But there's plenty of people. Dr. Hagerman's still here. I think Owner, who's sitting up here, can help with questions about causes and prescriptions.
So, next question. Okay. وقتی در مورد مشکل لمس بچهای اوتیسم صحبت حالا می‌کنیم، فکر می‌کنم من این مقدارش رو نمی‌تونم بخونم. آیا تناقض پیش نمی‌آید که مورد سوء استفاده قرار بگیرن؟ چگونه باید این رو آموزش داد که حفظ حریم رو هم یاد بگیرن؟ So when we're talking about the touching problem, when touch treatment, well, there is a contradiction that they might be subject to abuse. How should that be educated? How should that be taught?
Absolutely. Children with disabilities, intellectual disabilities, autism, are highly vulnerable to abuse. And the way that it makes parents makes their job even harder to really be able to keep an eye and understand that a lot of times these children are nonverbal, and how are they able to communicate that something terrible has happened to them. So it really does take more of a precautionary steps on the parents to making sure your child is safe, teaching children what's okay and not okay touches. That's what we do in the United States with sexual abuse, and doing that either through, what are those called, stories? Social stories, where they draw stories of what's okay and what's not okay, walking them through. Again, breaking everything down step by step. But one thing to remember is that children with autism can be developmentally at a very different stage than they are chronological age. And so whatever we are trying to teach these children, we must teach them to their developmental age. So if someone is 12 and or 13 going through puberty, it's really important that, but yet they have a developmental age of 6. The steps that we teach them and communicate with them is like a 6-year-old, not a 12 or 13-year-old. And so in order for it to be learned, and it may take longer, depending on their developmental age, but again, consistency, taking those, any skill you want to teach or anything you want to teach to your child, you want to break it down into small parts for them to really able to do it. If they cannot, you break it down even more, and you work with that each day until they master each step.
سوال بعد، آیا شیر شتر در درمان و کنترل رفتارهای کودکان اوتیسم موثر است؟ The question would be,